Today, we are going to be talking about equity and diversity for COP26. Before we do that, I'll introduce myself for those people who've just joined. I'm Laura Curtis-Moss. I'm just here to facilitate and chat today. I'm by no means an expert. I'm just helping our speakers make sure everybody gets their questions answered and asked. So we're here on behalf of 2050 Climate Group, which is a group set up in Scotland, sort of by young people for young people. And I believe it's almost entirely volunteer led. So we've got some fantastic volunteers with us today. They are going under the pseudonyms of Event Social Media and Event Tech Support, but thank you very much to them. And the idea is that young people are empowered to lead climate action. So they run lots and lots of wonderful sort of initiatives throughout the year. Lots and lots of online things happening at the moment, which is very, very exciting. So do look out for other events. And the idea is to sort of almost train up a cohort of Scotland's young people to be, well, not just the futures, but to be the climate leaders of today and tomorrow. This event is run in conjunction with the Malawi Scotland Partnership, who aim to connect and collaborate with people, not just young people, with people all the way across Malawi. And the idea is that we have thousands of people here in Scotland, thousands of people in Malawi, all sort of working together for the greater good of two small but punching above their weight countries. And the idea is that it's a partnership of equals. So we have people from Scotland going over to Malawi and supporting projects and bringing their learning back to Scotland. And we also have people from Malawi. I was lucky to meet Joanna and Promise, who I think might be here today. Nice to meet you. When they came over a few years ago, obviously pre-COVID, and they came over to Scotland, shared some learning with our Scottish young leaders, and took that back to their communities as well. So it's this wonderful, wonderful synergy between the two countries, based on a relationship that's been, it's had its ups and downs for over 100 years. But yeah, lots and lots of people in both countries working together. One of the key focuses at the moment, obviously, is climate change, and how do we tackle that within countries and between countries. We've got a few people today as well representing the Malawi Climate Leaders Project, so I'm sure they'll tell you a little bit about that themselves. And the idea is that these young leaders in Malawi, the same as some of the young leaders in Scotland, are catalysts for change, working towards a low carbon future. Really working in their own communities, much as the young leaders, the 2050 young leaders do in Scotland, working within their and our communities for what those communities need and want. So really accepting that different communities need different types of leadership and need different projects. COP, what is COP? I thought it was going to be something, when I first heard about it several years ago, I thought it was something really big and complicated. No, COP stands for Conference of Parties. So COP26, it just means it's the 26th one. We've had 25 conferences of parties since 1995. It was set up by the United Nations in 1992 following the Rio summit. Basically just decided that every year, give or take, interested parties need to get together and discuss how we as a global community are going to tackle climate change. So it's an international body, and it's not just governments, it will be NGOs, it'll also be businesses. So a huge range of different people getting together to try and tackle this international issue. COP26 was due to take place in Glasgow in November 2020. That was cancelled because of COVID. It obviously just wouldn't have been safe. And it's been delayed through to November 2021. I'm going to go ahead and assume, although I don't know, that there's going to be a much larger online component to COP26 than there has been in previous years. And certainly some of the sort of fringe events are going to be taking place online, which in a way is fantastic because it does make it more accessible. And it does mean that perhaps more people can be included. So just like today, actually, we're able to talk to people all the way across the world. Being able to afford a plane ticket isn't a barrier. Yeah, that is perhaps going to happen at COP next year. So today, our speakers are going to be talking about equality, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So really, until very recently, well, even ongoing, the narrative around climate change and around environmental issues has very much been dominated by the global north. So you're kind of, white men in suits with grey hair, wealthy people, companies, and organizations. And actually, we know that countries in the global south and less economically developed countries are sort of disproportionately going to be more vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And this, as I believe our speakers are going to go on to say, a lot of this is the legacy of racism and colonialism. And we also see things like women and non-binary people who don't identify as male, also being disproportionately affected by climate change. And at the moment, also things like COVID, unemployment, and sort of other social injustices. And I think one of the key things that I've noticed when I've been listening to these videos and we've been talking to people in advance of the event, one of the key things is this intersection of inequalities. So whether you are female, whether you are LGBT, whether you are living in a less economically developed country, whether you are a person of colour or an Indigenous person living either in your country of birth or you move elsewhere to study or to work, there's a whole range of different ways that people can be vulnerable to social injustice and or vulnerable to climate change. And it's really, really essential that for COP26 and any other climate action, we need to look at this intersection of inequalities, and we need to make sure that we have both equality and equity. They're not necessarily the same thing. We have diversity within who represents and who is represented, and we have inclusion. And as we'll see from our videos, and as I hope will be drawn out in the discussion, all of these things mean something slightly different. And there's lots of different right ways of ensuring that people are included, people's voices are heard, and we have that equity, diversity, and inclusion at COP26 and beyond. Right, I think that's enough from me. I will be monitoring questions, so get them going. And I think it's time to hear from our amazing speakers.
Our first speaker is Shirona Schneider. Shirona is an environmental activist, the chairwoman of the non-profit Our Streets PDX, and the co-founder of the global grassroots movement Tuesdays for Trash. Her main focus and passion is to create a cleaner and healthier home for everyone on this planet, which she reflects in all aspects of her life as a pillar of her community and asset to any cause she lends herself to. When she's not working or volunteering, you can find her spending time outdoors on hiking trails, reading, making memes, modelling, and lobbying for climate legislation.
Hi, my name is Sharona Shnayder. I'm an environmental activist currently based in Portland, Oregon, and the co-founder of the global environmental movement Tuesdays for Trash, which encourages everyone around the world to dedicate at least one day a week for the planet by picking up trash. And we also educate people on topics relative to climate justice and how they can integrate activism into their everyday routines. In the next 5 or so minutes, I'm going to be giving a few key points on the importance of picking up trash and how it can be utilized as a tool for legislative and economic change. But to clarify, when I mention trash, I mean it in the sense of litter, the stuff that pollutes our oceans like plastic water bottles, wrappers, and masks, as opposed to other forms of trash like leaders who fail to acknowledge problems at hand, or your trashy ex. So I think humor kind of helps me navigate this problem, which can be really difficult to face sometimes. Seeing how waste is affecting our world is not only tragic, but can be very traumatic and overwhelming. That's why I pick up trash in my communities every day, because it helps me gain a sense of control over the situation, and bit by bit, I feel like I'm making a positive contribution towards the health of our world. Additionally, when people see me picking up trash, it usually sparks something, whether it's a moment of clarity, realizing that our communities aren't as clean as we'd like to think, or the fact that we can all play a role in altering this reality, or the notion that picking up trash is something to be normalized, and it may not be your garbage, but it is your planet at the end of the day. That's one of the main reasons Tuesdays for Trash began, as a way for people to show the world that they care and encourage others to join in this fight towards a cleaner and healthier home for everyone. On a separate note, I've also seen avenues for economic and legislative change through picking up trash. For instance, something I started doing mostly out of spite was whenever I'd pick up litter with a brand's name on it, I would post it on my social media and tag the corporation, calling them out for manufacturing the product. Sometimes I'd add a witty remark or ways that the business could switch to more sustainable alternatives. And to my surprise, even some of the big businesses in my area started responding, and they were shocked to see the impact that their products were having on the environment, and were really eager to want to change and be better for the environment. Through this, I realized the potential of the action, and that if everyone did this, started calling out companies and putting pressure on businesses to do better, it could send a really strong message and help to reshape the way that trash is produced, encouraging businesses to not only use eco-friendly materials, but stop using materials like plastic that will remain on our planet long after we're gone. So hopefully this would funnel into regulations and policies that would help to hold producers accountable.
We started this movement as a way to make a positive impact after having a hard time feeling connected to our communities during the pandemic.
Because COVID-19 isn't the only crisis we're facing. The climate crisis poses an imminent threat to our home now and after the pandemic. So we need you in this movement too.
Because nobody does big things by themselves.
So let's be the change we wish to see in the world. Help encourage others by using the hashtag Tuesdays for Trash and tagging us in your posts.
Small acts of change, when multiplied, can transform the world.
Overall, the message that I hope you leave this video with is that you're capable of much more than our society has disserviced you to believe. Even seemingly small actions like picking up trash can have a drastic impact and become a catalyst for global change. So next time you see litter on the ground, don't just walk past it, grab some gloves, pick it up, and join the fight for the preservation of our Earth. Your future self will thank you.
Miriam Gay-Antaki is an assistant professor at the University of New Mexico. Her work focuses on human-environment relations in the era of anthropogenic global climate change. She draws from the frameworks of political ecology and feminist geography to trace climate change policy development as a series of network connections ranging from formal political spaces, such as the COP, to scientific spaces, such as the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, to the towns and communities where climate policies are implemented. Her work also investigates the participation and sometimes exclusion of women scientists and stakeholders in international climate change research and policy.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for listening and checking in. Before I begin, I want to thank the Malawi Scotland Partnership and 2050 Climate Group for inviting me. And also hi to Nia Hunjan, who extended this invitation to me. It is truly an honor to be amongst the speakers today. And, I really look forward to more conversations about equity and diversity at COP26, but those that follow. I will share my work with you to illuminate gender relations at the Conference of the Parties, the very complex gender relations at the Conference of the Parties. I am Miriam Gay-Antaki, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of New Mexico at the Geography and Environmental Studies. So feminist geography informs my work. As the title indicates, Feminist Geographies of Climate Change, Negotiating Gender at Climate Change Talks, I researched the barriers and opportunities of incorporating gender understandings into the Conference of the Parties. I will share some of my findings today with you to illuminate, to make clear what the barriers are, and then hopefully what opportunities exist to increase equity and diversity at the COPs, which is essential to adequately tackle climate change. At the Conference of the Parties, I was interested in how feminist and women's groups were incorporating gender into climate policy. I wanted to know what are the mechanisms by which some voices are heard while others are silenced in the climate negotiations as people try to incorporate gender in the climate debate. If you want to learn more about this work, I'd be very happy to share it with you. Please do email me. And I do think it's so important that you organize this event, in particular with the advent of COVID and how it has really illuminated global inequality and how we must make sure that this inequality is not replicated at the Conference of the Parties. If it does happen to be in person, we must ensure that the voices that will not be able to be there physically present, right, because of the same barriers that have also made them more vulnerable to climate change, we must ensure that we all have a place in the table, that our voices are heard, especially those voices that have been hardest hit, right? Not only by climate change, but also by COVID. So I do think that this event in particular is of particular importance. It is so important to study gender relations at the Conference of the Parties, because while it is a yearly meeting aimed at assessing the progress of climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, this is where a lot of powerful actors come to negotiate climate change and what we're going to do about it. And in this space, global agendas set dominant ideas that actually become materialized, affecting the everyday lives of people in the form of climate change policy or in the form of gender policies. I find that women are being introduced into the climate debate, but and in the 2015, the Paris Agreement, there's even a mention of gender equality, although this is in the preamble of the text, which is a section that carries no political weight. But nevertheless, while women are being incorporated into climate change policy finally, it is only women in like a singular form that is allowed to enter. The problem with this is that a single message excludes a diversity of perspectives around gender at the COPs, right? So under a single message, all women are the same. We all have the same priorities. And so if all women are the same and have the same priorities, we're not really talking about, while we might talk about patriarchy, we're not really talking about colonialism, racism, sexism, heteronormativity, and how these oppressive systems intersect simultaneously and either, you know, enhance or bar opportunities for us to access contributing to climate change solutions. So if there's a single message, what is this message, right? And then who controls the message? And this is something that I set out to understand. So at the COPs, the negotiations surrounding gender seem to focus on two main terms, gender equality and gender balance, which maybe we don't think about it too much, right? Because it's just language, it's terms. But at the Conference of the Parties, these are negotiated to death, right? And we'll see, I'll try to explain to you very briefly why. So gender balance is achieved when there are approximately equal numbers of men and women present or participating. So you don't even need to be participating, you just need to be there, right? You just need to be a body. Gender equality, which is probably a term that we're more familiar with, is that we're all equal. We all should have the same rights, regardless of our gender, of our sexual orientation, of our race, of our ethnicity, religion, right? So that is something that we want to strive for. But as you can imagine, such a term is really contentious at the Conference of the Parties. That includes a whole, it includes the whole world, right? And a lot of different countries with a lot of different priorities. I found that gender balance actually is the term that dominates the negotiation. And what happens in this space is that this term is actually beneficial for women that are already in power at the Conference of the Parties, because they can say, listen, we want, you know, we're very much fighting for gender. Just bring us more women. Let's fight for more women to be in this space, which is not as sophisticated and it's not as complicated as incorporating the term gender equality, right? Which kind of transcends the Conference of the Parties, transcends that space. So it does really require a more structural shifting and transformation. But this is not an easy thing to accept or act upon, right? So any mention of gender is considered a victory by those in power. And I just want to stress briefly here that it's so important to bring in an intersectional approach when we're talking about women and gender, because it finds that not all women consider the introduction of gender balance a victory, right? A key informant said regarding why they chose kind of in response to the gender balance. There is no hurry. I know that I will die and I will not see gender equality, but I want to lay the groundwork for real change. So what's the difference between 1 month to the next or 2 years? This way, you do not negotiate something as crucial as the recognition that women are people, right? So this informant did feel that there was like a really not good trade-off between gender balance and gender equality, right? Because some people are like, there's a gender policy that passed, but this was one of the main problems. So there's a big potential of gender to engage and imagine radical solutions to climate change, right? If we really think about gender as an political category that is transformative rather than just as women, we might really start beginning to push and make space to include different worldviews and perspectives, right? So that we actually really address climate change. And it is so important that we participate in such spaces so that the policies and science and implementation of these policies actually reflect our priorities, which are diverse and encompass many different layers and systems of oppression. So I've been speaking for more than the 8 minutes, so I want to thank you so much. If you have any questions and want to continue a conversation or just a copy of this research, do email me at mgayantaki@unm.edu. And I wish you all very well and hope to meet you in person at some point soon. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Kelvin Chinguwo. Kelvin is a Malawi Scotland Partnership climate change young leader. He has just finished pursuing a Bachelor of Education in Humanities from Damacy College of Education. Kelvin focuses on advocating for climate justice among fellow youths so as to probe for further youth engagement in climate action.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelvin Chinguwo and I happen to be one of the Malawi Scotland Partnership climate young ladies, and I'm here to share with you the importance of equity and diversity in climate action. So without further ado, facilitating a variety of perspectives is one of the importances of equity and diversity in climate action, as this allows people from different societies to come together and participate in climate action, and this allows different ideas to be shared, and diversity breeds creativity. And it also allows multicultural integration, as with diversity, it means that skilled personnel from various places are likely to be brought together, and this facilitates the introduction of diverse and inclusive solutions to common climate problems. And this in turn solidifies the discussed ideologies as they are a representation of the general populace and not necessarily only the elite. And furthermore, it also ensures inclusiveness, as with equity, everyone is given an equal chance to participate in climate action. So you can appreciate how it is important to ensure that there is equal and diversity in climate action. And lastly but not least, it will also help in increasing the coordination, relationship, and teamwork among people that are working in climate action, and thus improving the implementation and productivity of the climate action. Thank you for listening.
Our next speaker will be Enoch Mwewa Jr. Enoch is a trained climate reality leader by former Vice President Al Gore, Earth Day Network My Future, My Voice ambassador, blogger, activist, and environmentalist. He is most notable for his work to end plastic pollution through leading campaigns and supporting sustainable initiatives.
Hi, my name is Enoch, a climate activist from Zambia. I believe noticing a problem is an automatic call to take action, and right now the world is facing so many problems, amongst which is climate change. Now, I personally first studied of climate change when I was in my 10th grade. It was a topic that I needed to study for the exams in geography. I didn't know that climate change would actually go outside the classroom and affect my future greatly. Now, for those that may not know, Climate change is basically a dramatic shift in the atmospheric weather conditions of a certain place for an extended period of time. Let me give an example. In my area, the rains would usually begin in October, but now the rains are actually starting as late as December and only lasting for a few months, maybe all the way up to February or March. Now, that has been a shift from the original to the new normal. But this is something that we have a part to play in, and it's occurring because certain human activities, such as fossil fuel emissions. When we do this, we're releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which builds up to global warming gases, and which creates the global warming effect of warming our temperature, such that we have droughts on one end and also floods on the other end. We're also cutting down trees. Now, trees act as carbon sinks, and whenever we cut them, we're reducing those carbon sinks. As such, we need to plant more trees as a solution. Then we need to come together in ensuring that we fight climate change, because this is not just something that needs to be done by the government or non-government institutions, but it's something that requires collective efforts. As such, I feel we need to ensure that all voices are represented in shaping the future that we want. Youths, let's come on board. The largest population in the world is made up of youths. As such, I feel youths, we deserve a seat at the table of leadership, and also we should take keen interest in solving climate-related issues. And I also feel we should go out there in the rural areas and ensure that we raise awareness on climate-related issues, because in those places, because of their culture and heritages, they just feel that climate comes about because God wants it that way, but it's something that is within our hands to solve. Let's go there and teach the rural areas that climate change is solvable, and it's what is leading to the droughts, and also which is reducing their food baskets. When we do that, at least we are going to make tremendous progress in shaping the future that we want. Now, we should be deliberate about change. As such, if we remain idle and stay silent on climate-related issues, we should not sit down and complain. Whenever we see bushfires, whenever we see droughts, whenever we see floods, we should not complain. Whenever we see rain bombs, we should not complain, because we are being idle about climate change. As such, let us take keen interest in climate-related issues. Let us raise awareness. Let us go out there in schools and ensure that the students learn about climate change in not just a 45-minute topic, but into a lifestyle that they're actually going to be inspired to take action. I've been personally inspired by Greta Thunberg, who, after gaining profound knowledge about climate-related issues, she started making climate-related actions in solving it. She held protests. We also can do protests. She raised sensitizations. We also can sensitize. It's not just about, like I said, about a certain government institution or a certain party solving climate-related issue, but it's up to us to come on board and solve these issues. Remember, if we do not do anything about climate change, we shouldn't be complaining about its effects. But rather, if we are to secure the future, we need to make sure that we take climate-related action. Let's take the lead on climate, and also make sure that we support the Paris Agreement, which has been in effect. Otherwise, raising the global temperatures to over 1.5 degrees is going to be devastating for all of us. Let us take part in these issues, and also let us support all campaigns that have been established by our different parties. We also need to force political will in solving these problems. We need to ensure that politicians are included in if we are to shape the future that we want, because politicians are the influencers that can actually make policies that are sound, and also policies that can support climate-related actions. Without politicians, then we are just our efforts can be equals to zero. As such, let us make sure that we also involve politicians in ensuring that we fight for climate action. We need also to reach out to any influencer, may it be public figures, because they also are influencers of change. Let us also bring on board any other person, especially even those that are disadvantaged or have got different disabilities. As like I said, we need to leave no one behind. Everybody needs to come on board and also fight climate change, because it is affecting us and all of us greatly. Let us not forget the person that is in the rural areas. Let us bring them on board. Let us make sure that they are also part of this, and they also understand that climate change can be solvable, and whatever is going through right now, it's because of climate change. We have become vulnerable to diseases because of climate change. Pandemics are current among us because they have created a certain habitable environment for them. So as such, that is just another way why climate change is affecting us greatly, and also why we need to act on it. Let us make sure that all voices are represented in shaping the future we want. Let us bring on board the rural dwellers. Let us bring on board politicians. Let us bring on board influencers. Let us try to relate us to companies and individuals that are actually causing and contributing to climate change. Let us stop plastic pollution. In my country, you can't walk for more than 2 meters without actually running across a plastic or a plastic bottle. Now, that is also leading to climate change. As such, we need to make sure that everybody comes on board and make sure that we take relevant action in solving this problem. Together we can, and as such, let us all join forces and solve this climate-related issue. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth Wathuti. Elizabeth is the founder of Green Generation Initiative and the head of campaigns and coordinator at the Daima Coalition for the Protection of Urban Green Spaces at the Wangari Maathai Foundation. Due to her outstanding passion, leadership, and personal commitment to environmental conservation and societal issues, she received the Wangari Maathai Scholarship Award for the Greenbelt Movement. With a bachelor's degree in environmental studies and community development, she has been honoured internationally with the Diana Award in 2019 and at COP25 with the Green Climate Fund's Youth Climate Champion Award.
Every day, minute, and hour that passes without urgent action on climate change translates to failing the future generations. I personally got an opportunity to grow up in the woods, and I got a chance to love nature and to interact with nature at a young age, having grown up in the most forested region in Kenya. And for me, this is an opportunity that made me realize how great nature is and made me realize the essential services that we get from nature. And of course, along the way, I felt heartbroken witnessing deforestation at first hand. And that is why right now I'm on a mission to fight for nature restoration and also push for nature regeneration, and at the same time ensure that we have all our natural remaining ecosystems intact. And lastly, what we focus on is addressing food insecurity. Food insecurity is one of the impacts that is greatly affecting the African continent as a result of the climate crisis. So what we do is that we get to schools and then focus on designated corners in the school compound, and then you plant mixed species of fruit trees around the school compound. And what this means is that these fruit trees are not only going to help the country increase the forest cover, but at the same time, it's also going to provide a nutritious source of food for the children to eat at the end of the day. So the question is, with all the challenges that I've mentioned, what is it that we can do to support young people like me and also to support vulnerable populations to adapt to the impacts of the climate crisis? And of course, one of the things is to give them a voice, give the young people and the most vulnerable people a voice. And this means placing them at the center of key decision making and negotiations to also make their voices heard. And then we also need to build resilience by all means to ensure that the people that are the most vulnerable have the capacity to withstand the climate shocks. And the other thing is to also make sure that we are financing towards nature-based solutions and ensuring that people and nature thrive at the same time. And the other thing is we have to make sure that we are pulling investments out of every activity that is fueling deforestation and every activity that is fueling biodiversity loss. And then we have to make sure that we are increasing the participation of the people that are at the center of this crisis and also the young people. And then lastly, we have to empower people to showcase their work by raising their voices. And I think at the end of the day, this is the point in time where we look at the COP26 expected outcomes. And for me, I'm looking for some outcomes whereby we can begin to invest in nature's ability to address climate change. For a very long time now, the world has kind of neglected the role that nature plays in addressing and tackling the climate crisis. And this is the point in time when the world should be embarking on making sure that every remaining ecosystem stays intact. Because we cannot continue to talk about action when we are degrading our ecosystems. We have to make sure that every degraded land has been restored, and at the same time you have to make sure that every remaining ecosystem continues to remain intact if we have to win the war against the climate crisis. And at the same time, this is where we insist on protecting the high carbon ecosystems and sinks, because we need them when it comes to climate change mitigation and adaptation, especially in the African continent, where most of these resources remain intact. So we cannot afford to sacrifice these resources for anything. The other thing, in addition to lowering emissions and pulling investments out of fossil fuels, we have to also pull investments out of every activity that is fueling deforestation and biodiversity loss. And this is because our ecosystems need our help. And this is the time for the world to stop and make sure that we are protecting, restoring, preserving, and sustainably managing all our ecosystems. Because my generation and all generations to come deserve better. We deserve to have a livable world and a safe future. And this is only going to be made possible if we give nature a chance by protecting, restoring, preserving, and sustainably managing our ecosystems. So the world has to respect the limits of the Earth's natural systems so that humanity can thrive and accelerate actions of a sustainable future. And I'll end with a quote by the late Professor Wangari Maathai. She always insisted that those of us who understand, who feel strongly, must not tire. We must not give up, because the burden is on us who know. Those who don't know are at peace. It is us who know that are greatly disturbed and are caused to take action. So to everyone out there and to the world leaders, investors, businesses, the young people, and everyone else is watching me, it is our time to make sure that our actions are mindful of how we leave this planet for the next generations. It is time for us to ensure that we leave this planet better for all generations to come. And it is our time to ensure that every action and anything that we are doing right now puts people and our planet above profits. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Wanjiku Gatheru, or Wawa. Wawa is an environmental justice advocate, writer, and current graduate student at the University of Oxford. She is a first-generation American of Kenyan descent and the first black person in history to receive the Rhodes, Truman, and Udall scholarships. As an intersectional environmentalist, Wawa is motivated to uplift the voices of those most adversely impacted by environmental inequalities through changing conservation conversations. For her work in collaboration with other activists and thought leaders, Wawa has been recognised as a 2020 Young Futurist by The Root, a 2020 Grist 50 Fixer, a 2020 Glamour College Woman of the Year, and has spoken on her work across the country.
Hello. To begin my remarks, I'd like to thank the 2050 Climate Group and sponsors for putting on this really important event. I feel very honored and thankful to be able to share a virtual stage with so many thought leaders and climate activists and advocates from around the world that are so grounded in purpose and so grounded in pushing bodies like COP towards being inclusive and vested in justice, especially when it comes to conceptualizing a climate future. I also am very, very honored to be able to see this huge transition in COP, in the conversations around COP that are pushing COP leadership to really walk the walk of equity and really make sure that most vulnerable people are centered in climate decision making. But first, before I get into all that, I should introduce myself. My name is Wanjiku, Gatheru, friends call me Wawa, and I'm a 22-year-old environmental justice advocate, writer, and current graduate student at the University of Oxford. But before all those things, I think it's also important to introduce the parts of myself that I think are the most pertinent to my identity and are the reasons why and how I show up in the climate movement. And that's in my identities as a daughter, as a sister, as a partner, as a friend, and as a proud Black woman. I think it's really important to acknowledge the way that those identities really show up in the work that I do in this space and in the way that I conceptualize justice in this movement. So right now, I think a lot of us can agree that we are experiencing the greatest existential threat that this world has ever seen, which is the climate crisis. And it's an existential threat because it calls into question everything that we have been taught to put our faith in and believe in, from the institutions that we rely on to the politicians we put our trust in, and in the very possibility of conceptualizing an inhabitable future. So COP26 will bring together global leaders from around the world to take part in conversations and dialogue, which will hopefully propel and accelerate action towards the goals of the Paris Agreement and the U.S. Framework Convention on Climate Change. However, it's also very, very clear that COP in the past has unfortunately not been a space that has centered the voices of frontline folks, in which the folks from around the world that are experiencing the climate crisis first and worse in real time haven't really been centered or provided a platform to be a part of these important conversations. Particularly BIPOC communities around the world bear a disproportionate burden from the impacts of the climate crisis due to the historic and continuing implications of racism, colonialism, and inequity. And it's disappointing that the movement that is vested in solving this crisis has sidelined our voices, but our voices will be sidelined no more. And I'm really excited to be engaging in this conversation and dialogue with all of us. So as the next generation, as youth, as BIPOC youth, it's our responsibility to really push COP forward in ensuring that they're centering our voices, our community's voices, but also in validating the way that we show up, and also providing knowledge to each other on how we could best be climate activists that are really vested in justice and do that intentionally. So the remarks that I have today are based off of the 3 steps that I believe that youth have to take to make sure that we're showing up in this movement in a way that is really pushing this movement forward. And my remarks are really oriented towards other youth. And I hope y'all enjoy them. So as the next generation, like I said, we have to push COP leadership forward. But even beyond that, we have to validate our own experiences as environmentalists and as leaders of today and tomorrow. And I believe that it begins with us, youth, and especially in the way that we define success. And right, if we agree that success means preserving the valuable things in our lives and preserving our physical, emotional, and social well-being, then solving the climate crisis must start there, in our backyards, in our relationships. And I think COP has a lot to learn from us, and it's important for us to live out our truths and naming them out. So that's what I'll be doing, naming out some of the truths that I've been passed down in my community as a way to share knowledge across the movements that are coming together all around the world. So I believe it all starts with practicing revolution in our everyday lives. So the great Audre Lorde once said, sometimes we are blessed with being able to choose the time and the arena and the manner of our evolution, but most usually we must do battle where we're standing. And that's the truth that grounds the 3 steps that I have here today. And I think that's the truth that grounds us in our work in the climate space, and the fact that we never asked for this climate crisis. But what we can do right now is be proactive in the way that we show up in this movement, in being invested in our communities, and in being invested in the love that drives us to show up for our communities, our ancestral homelands, and the environments that we inhabit. So the first step, I believe, to rehearsing revolution in our everyday lives is to fall in love with the possibilities. Mary-Annalise Hegler once said in a fabulous tweet that the thing about climate is that you can either be overwhelmed by the complexity of the problem or fall in love with the creativity of the solution. And in order to get to a point to fall in love with the creativity of the solutions, I think we have to first reframe the issue of climate change entirely. When we think about the causes that we fight for outside of the climate crisis, what are the things that come up in your mind, right? The things that have been historically sidelined outside of the climate crisis: gender justice, economic justice, prison abolition, education. If you're to close your eyes and think about what a just future looks like, what a just climate future looks like, wouldn't we include all those things? I think it's really important for us to not feel as though we have to sideline parts of our identities, things that drive us, that seem outside of the sphere of climate. Because the thing is, the climate crisis encompasses everything. The climate crisis exacerbates existing social ills. And in order to solve a climate crisis, we have to understand that we have to have solutions that are vested in social justice, in solving other social ills like poverty, like gender inequality, like mass incarceration, because creating a just future must include eradicating systems of oppression around the world. And what's really exciting about this work and in understanding that is that I think that brings us closer as a movement in being driven, invested in love. And I think that this love that spouts action and community resilience isn't new. And it's actually a part of our generational inheritance, which leads me to the second step, which is for us to recognize the fights that we're inheriting and continuing. When it comes to the issue of the climate crisis, the scale and scope of this problem feels overwhelming, and it should, because a lot of our communities are already experiencing it. A lot of us know that based off of the numbers of how carbon emissions are going right now, we're going to be seeing a lot of climate disaster. But the thing about this movement is the fact that two things can be true at the same time. Two things can be true at the same time in the fact of validating the fact that we are experiencing a climate crisis, but also understanding that the weight of this problem isn't ours to bear alone. And that the good thing about the weight is, but the good thing is that the weight of the world is not ours alone. And the fight for a just climate is connected to every other social movement that's come before us. And it's up to us as youth in this climate movement, to really lean into the words and wisdom that have been left behind for us by the great social movement leaders that came before us, because they understood what it meant for tomorrow not to be guaranteed. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a language of justice and a language of crafting a just future. And that language exists, and it's up to us to really lean into that and understand the movements that we're inheriting. And that leads me to my third step, which is practice. I think it's important for us to practice revolution in our everyday lives. In the tradition of leaning into the wisdom of the great social movement leaders that have come before us, I will once again cite one of my favorite authors of all time, Audre Lorde. And they said revolution is not a one-time event. When it comes to practicing revolution everywhere, we must get comfortable making the incremental steps that we need to get there. And luckily, that isn't new. Practice isn't new. If you close your eyes and think about the time you have to learn something difficult, whether that was swimming, riding a bike, when you first started, it felt insurmountable. But once you practice, once you start getting comfortable, once you fell a couple times, you picked yourself back up. And with each incremental moment of practice, the goal felt a lot more achievable. Before long, it felt second nature. And that's the same mindset that we need to have when it comes to practicing revolution every day and challenging the institutions that we rely on, challenging our politicians, challenging COP leadership to really be vested in the justice that really must be centered in this movement. It must be centered in climate conversations. And I think that this idea of practice is required for revolution, because if we're not practicing revolution every day, will we ever be equipped to do it in real time? Will we ever be equipped to really push the folks around us, push ourselves to really do everything we can to be invested in justice? Now, if there's anything that I've learned from the never-ending trauma of the past year, it's this, is that there's always an opportunity to reshape the ways we learn and use our time. And I'm really excited for the upcoming Q&A, where I'll be able to answer some questions that go into a little bit more depth about these 3 action-oriented frameworks that have been passed down to me by my communities and the folks that I love. And I'm really, really excited for the engaging conversations that we have in the future, and in hopefully seeing a COP that is vested in centering our voices, the voices of BIPOC frontline people from around the world, in the global north and in the global south, and really making sure that we are best equipped for solving the climate crisis at the scale and scope in which we need to. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Lisa Banda, a young climate change advocate based in Lilongwe, Malawi. She works with the Civil Society Network on Climate Change as a project coordinator, and currently is managing the Climate Justice Advocacy Project under the Climate Challenge Programme Malawi. She holds a bachelor degree in environmental science from the Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources. She's also been trained in climate justice advocacy and participatory monitoring and evaluation of policies, plans and programmes.
When it comes to climate justice, it's a matter of working together, working collectively as stakeholders, ensuring that there is that favorable environment where people can actually implement climate change adaptation actions. Not just adaptation actions, but also being able to mitigate climate change. So it's a matter of working together as stakeholders, but also when we're dealing with climate justice, we should be able to bridge the gap that is there between decision makers and the people that are at the end of it. We talk about a top bottom approach. So we need to bridge that bottom and that top. So when it comes to an issue of equity, it's all about ensuring that there is fairness, there is burden sharing. As of now, we talk about climate justice because we see that the countries that have really contributed much, that have really emitted a lot of greenhouse gases, they are not really doing a lot to support countries that have not contributed much greenhouse gases to trigger climate change. So it's a matter of ensuring that people take responsibility. People are capacitated. People are being given that environment where their rights are not affected just because there is climate change impacts. So when it comes to taking responsibility, it's a matter of raising that awareness. It's a matter of reminding the people that are supposed to take responsibility, those countries that are supposed to take responsibility, letting them know that you are bound to this. You are bound to do this because you have also been part to triggering this these climate change impacts. It's a matter of ensuring that those agreements that people sign to, we have the Paris Agreement and other agreements that have been there, those agreements that bound countries to ensure that they work towards reducing the greenhouse gases individually, country with country-owned actions. We need to cut that message across to them, set that tone where people are able to understand that they need to take this responsibility. We had a case where the USA opted out of the Paris Agreement, which was really their choice to make as a country. But as the United States, they also needed to realize that they have that responsibility because they are also one of the countries that are powerful in terms of industries. So they have really contributed a lot as well to the climate change impacts that we are facing right now. They have contributed a lot of greenhouse gases as well. So it shouldn't be an option, We need to make people understand that achieving fairness is all about making people aware of their responsibility towards the environment, towards curbing the impacts of climate change, towards supporting people that are less able to support themselves to build back better and stronger and also survive in an environment where survival is really dependent on our actions, but also the actions of another person. So responsibility is one issue that needs to be addressed. But it also comes down to issue of capacity. The people that are facing a lot of challenges, facing a lot of impacts from this climate change. We talk of the floods, we talk of the droughts. These issues that have been triggered due to changes in climate. There has to be a capacity building process for these people. When we talk about capacity building, it's not only about the technical support. It's not only about other forms of support that are there, but we need the financial support. People need to be capacitated, but also the awareness needs to be there because once someone knows the problem, they can act on it. It's not only about doing something about an issue. Knowledge, they say, is power. So building that capacity to people is really important. Supporting them is also important. Going back to responsibility, at this one meeting that I was at, where we brought together the National Technical Committee on Climate Change and also leaders, community members to interact. One person asked, what are people in town doing to address climate change impacts? What are they doing? They talked about how they are planting trees, how they are adopting new ways or alternative sources of energy. What are people in town doing? That is a question that we need to be asking. What are you doing as countries that have emitted a lot of greenhouse gases in the country? What are you doing besides giving money to support tree planting initiatives, giving out money to support research towards how we can adapt better to climate change impacts? What are you doing yourself? It's a lot that there are a lot of sectors that have been affected by climate change. Let us be moving from things that are really affecting us as a people individually to things that are really affecting us as a country from growing. Climate change is really affecting the economies of different countries, and we need to cut that message across to each and every member to understand. It's a matter of making sure that people's rights are also being incorporated in these discussions, because when it comes to climate justice, we understand that climate change is an issue that affects our rights. Climate change is an issue that affects our rights. There we have different human rights that are there. We have the right to life, right to health, right to a clean and safe environment, right to education. All these rights are being affected by all these impacts from climate change. So that is the message that we need to be cutting across. That is the message that we need to speak in one voice to all the decision makers, so that they actually feel that we want more. We want more and we cannot settle for less. So my take is equity is us as people that are on the receiving end of the impacts of climate change, speaking with one voice, demanding what we want. We are in this generation where youth are actually demanding things. We are demanding good governance. We are demanding security. We are demanding transparency and accountability. Let us also demand a safe and clean environment. Let us demand that a safe and healthy environment is what would actually be good environment for the youth to actually grow themselves economically and even physically, because climate change affects us all, and equity is one way of ensuring that people that have not really done much to contribute to the emissions of greenhouse gases, people that have not really contributed much are actually living in an environment where they can grow sustainably and also achieve their goals. We need to speak with one voice, and we need to make sure that people know that they are duty bound to address this. They are duty bound to address this. We need them to understand that while other people have a choice, there are those that do not have a choice. Some people have a choice to leave, to exit a treaty. But us, as a country, we do not have a choice because our people are actually suffering. So let us raise that awareness. Let us speak with one voice. Let us demand that there is equity, because fairness, it can only be achieved if two people actually agree on a point. If one person stresses their argument and the other person finds it in their heart to believe it. So let us speak our voice. Let us speak our minds. Let us rise up. Well, I'm sorry, I always get emotional when I talk about climate change issues. Anyway, have a good day. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you guys.
Okay, thank you so much to our 7 incredible speakers. And I believe we are lucky enough to have 5 of them. I'm sure my colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong, but to have 5 of them here to answer a few questions. We've got around 15 minutes left, but not to worry if we don't have time to get through all of the questions, which I'm almost certain we won't because they're already flooding in. If you would like to pop them in the chat, or you can send them to 2050 colleagues, and I think one of them is going to pop the email down in the chat that you can send them to in just a moment. Otherwise, please pop them in the Q&A function and we will get started. So I'd like to invite our 5 speakers. So Kelvin from Malawi, who talked about involving the whole population, not just the elite. Enoch from Zambia, who emphasised the importance of including rural communities. Wawa from, who I believe is over on the east coast of America, but currently studying at Oxford, who talked about revolution. Elizabeth from Kenya, who spoke about the importance of giving ecosystems a chance to save the planet. And last but not least, Lisa from Malawi, who talked about the need to collaborate and how we can build back better. And the email is contact@2050.scot. So please send your questions there. And you can join in on Twitter via the hashtag Equity and Diversity COP26. But yes, I'd like to invite the speakers to turn their videos on if they are able. I know everybody's bandwidth is always a bit of a challenge at the moment. And let's get to some questions. So, well, in no particular order, we've got some questions on the Q&A. Everybody seems to have really enjoyed the presentation videos, and they're interested in having contact details for people in the chat. So I wonder if, again, one of my 2050 colleagues would be able to pop in some Twitter or Instagram handles so that people can get in touch with our wonderful speakers and give them a virtual round of applause. But yeah, questions. So our first question, and who's a good person to take this on? I think let's go to Lisa first, if that's okay, Lisa. How can you convince major polluting countries who believe they are so far away from the problem that the problem is their problem too? So maybe one for Lisa to talk about how we can collaborate that one.
I think as people that are involved in climate change activism, the main focus on things is build on research work. We need to have that evidence because nowadays people need to know what is actually happening so that they can act on something. So it should be.
Okay, Lisa, we're having a bit of trouble hearing you. I've turned your video off in the hope that will make it a bit clearer. But if not, what we might get you to do is we might just get you to write out what you were going to say, because from what I could hear, it sounded really interesting, but unfortunately the connection is a little bit difficult.
So I was saying that one thing that I mentioned in my speech is that we need just to move not only in supporting tree planting initiatives or among other things that are being supported. We need to also lobby for the money to finance research towards the backing for the claims that we make on the people that have contributed a lot of greenhouse gases, the people that have emitted more, so that they can commit themselves to support us financially in terms of climate change adaptation initiatives as countries that have been affected more by these impacts, yet we have not contributed a lot to the greenhouse gas emissions. So our investment must also be made in research work because people understand what they...
Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and ask the same question to Enoch. So Enoch, how do we convince major polluting countries who believe they are so far away from the problem that the problem is their problem too?
I'll add on to what Lisa said. Yes, we need to have the research done. We need to have the facts, not assumptions, not opinions. So I think research is a very important aspect about it. Then after we've done the research, we need to have now the numbers. It's important to get the numbers. I think the numbers can be very pivotal in influencing change. Once you have the general public on your side, at least then that will like force change into major polluting countries to actually do something about it, because it will be ruining their reputation. And also, to me, I feel, I believe in the power of social media. There have been a lot of campaigns that have been backed up by social media, and they have spread like wildfire. So anything that that can like put the reputation of a country in disregard, it can be taken to social media and just see what other people are saying about it. And also that way, politicians of those countries, they can really be influenced to make the change that they actually need to do. So I think those are just some of the way that can be done, but also it's to have an approach that actually makes them a threat to perhaps maybe their economy. When this is done, maybe maybe let's say they are investing so much in coal, and then if the general public is aware of the impacts of coal that they are doing to the people, then others can begin to pull out from those countries, because they're actually supporting something which is negative. They're supporting something that can be detrimental to health. So that way, I think that they'll be threatened that it might actually affect their economy so much, so they might actually be forced to make the right decisions. So I think that's just some of the ways that we can actually force major polluting countries.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Our next question is going to go to Wawa, I think. I feel like this one is very much aimed at you. What are some of the everyday revolutionary activities we can all do to make change in our lives? Where can we get inspiration and help grow a movement?
Hey, so my video's being a little weird, so I'm just gonna send in the audio, but thank you for this question for whoever asked it. But I'd say there are a lot of different ways that we can practice revolution in our lives, particularly for folks that are in organizing spaces, in climate organizing, and working with different people in our communities to really ensure that climate change is being addressed adequately. I think it's really important for us to make sure that the futures that we're working towards, that the dynamics that we want to see in this future, just climate future, that those dynamics are being replicated in our organizing spaces. So when we say that we want a just climate future free of oppression, free of belittling people, and one that uplifts the voices of the most vulnerable, that passes power equitably, we need to make sure that we're replicating that in our organizing spaces, right? When we're interacting with our loved ones, are we letting people speak their truths freely? Are we giving people equitable opportunities to talk, equitable opportunities to share their concerns? Are our organizing spaces kind? Are they filled with love, right? I think oftentimes when it comes to addressing something like climate change that is so close to so many of our hearts, it can get really, really hard to remember those things. So I think that's really important. The other thing is I think it comes with a lot of humility as well, listening to other folks, particularly people from around the world, especially from the global south that are already experiencing climate change first and worse. And it's really important that we listen and make sure that the voices of frontline folks really are centered, not just in climate change or explicitly climate change related issues, but really in every social justice issue. I think also we should always push ourselves to learn, read, learn from the words, like I said before, of the great social justice movement leaders that have come before us, as well as the folks that maybe didn't always get, the same type of airplay. I get a lot of my inspiration in my life from my parents, from my family, from my grandparents, and I think there's a lot of wisdom to be tapped into from our loved ones. And a lot of our loved ones who are older than us, from generations that are older, went through different issues in their time where the future wasn't always promised. So I think really listening to our loved ones, older folks, and really uplifting intergenerational communication. What else? Yeah, and kind of the things that I talked about in the remarks.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I think, yeah, really just trying to get everybody to talk a little bit more. Sort of an 8-minute video was just not enough. So I would definitely gonna follow you all on Twitter and try and get lots more information. Okay, we only have a couple of minutes left, so I'm gonna try and squeeze in some quick fire questions. So I guess the last, probably a good one to finish on. How can we, it's a controversial one from Pauline, how can we encourage the many older established leaders who may be failing us to have the courage to step aside for young leaders who have the solutions, approaches, compassion and joy needed to really address the climate crisis? So I think we'll go to Kelvin first, if that's okay. And then Elizabeth, if you are here and able to chat, I'm going to ask you the same question. So Kelvin, what do you think? How do we get older leaders to step aside for the new cohort?
Okay, from my perspective, I'd say that it's an issue of clearing channels that these people can be able to appreciate the kind of capacity that us young leaders have. Okay, so we have to like show them that we're capable of leading whatever initiative it is that they are clinging to. If it is a position, maybe let's say in climate change, we need to show them that we also have the capacity to make whatever change that is necessary. So it's an issue of us like showing to them that we are capable and willing to do whatever it is that they're also doing, and we can even do it better simply because we're even younger than them, we are even more creative than them, we're even very likely to be more innovative than them. So it's an issue of us like showing them of our capabilities.
Okay, brilliant. I appreciate how concise you were as well. So that has taken us to 1:30. So I'm going to let everybody go. We've had some fantastic questions here. And we'll try and see if we can answer some of them in the chat just now. Otherwise, we're going to email them off to our speakers, get them to send you the information. This webinar, this video will be available online. Please do stay in touch with 2050. You've got our contact details. If you want any follow-up questions, then please do get in touch. And I'd just like to once again say thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you to all of the 2050 volunteers who came and supported. I know we had some technical difficulties, so thank you to all of our attendees who bore with us. And please enjoy the rest of your day, whether you're off or you're off to work, or whatever you're going to do. Yeah, thank you.